Hey guys, we made a different improvement to the software installer tool also. I want to go ahead and point this out before I forget all about explaining this. So reconcile databases. The purpose of reconcile databases is to, let me just explain it this way. It's going to be so much easier. So if you have your domain.com, okay, and you installed a panel to it, T2HA template, or maybe some software, something that must interact with databases, then there could be a database connected to the files in the root, right? Like a connection.php file in your root, and it, with PHP is saying connect these files to this database, right? Really common concept. But then what if you also have projects that you stuck up in different subdomains, say? All right, you got roofers.domain.com because maybe you installed a different panel there. Okay, and if so, then it's connecting also to a database, but it's a different database, right? Because every panel or every software you have must connect to its very own database. Okay, they can't all share the same one. So they'll have their own databases. So if you have another instance, another instance, another instance, which in Software Installer, of course, is really, really easy to do. It's easy to create mini projects on many subdomains of one website for you and or other clients. And it's also easy to put them up on other websites. Anyway, let's say you've been doing that for a while. And eventually, some of these projects are kind of useless, or you move them. Maybe they were for a client and the client approved and you moved it over to the client's thing, but it's just taking up room on your website. So you might start deleting some of your domains. And so you wind up with deleted.domain.com. Now, maybe you deleted the subdomain in the files, but what about the related database that used to be connected to it? If you delete the subdomain with the files, you're not deleting the database, okay? So if that database with the database user, that wrote in with it, that got created with it to connect, because you wind up with 1,000 databases and each one has a user attached to it. Right now, you can attach more than one user to a database, right? But you have to create users and attach them to databases so that the files say, this is the user I'm allowed to be, and this is the database I'm allowed to connect to. Okay, so the connection.php file will have that information to connect the files to the database, right? Well, if you delete the files but you do not delete the database, then that database with its user was not deleted. So it's an orphaned database that's taking up space on your server. And it could slow down SQL. Maybe it has a whole lot of, if this is other software and it had like 1 billion rows of data, and then you got rid of the software because you didn't want it anymore, you still have the database with billions of rows, a billion rows of data, taking up total space on your server, right? And it could also jam SQL. So other softwares or panels on your website that are also trying to look up information in the database have to wade through those billions of bits of data to find what they are supposed to bring back, or or they can barely do it because there's not a lot of room, or who knows what. In the worst case scenarios, old databases are still running on cron jobs and they run empty queries. They think they're doing something, but they're not connected to any files, so they just run uselessly over and over again. And you have to find them and delete them. Okay, so like stop the cron jobs too. So over time, let's say you deleted different panels. So you deleted this job and you deleted that one and that one, right? But you may have several databases that are taking up space. As a big example, on theme2html.com, right now there are 373 templates. This is for all the different templates that we made very often for clients, but there are 840 databases. Why? Because very many jobs that we do for clients wind up on a subdomain of ours until such time as it gets moved to a client's final destination and we delete it from our website. And so if that's not meant to be like a common thing for others or used as a basis for others, then it gets deleted. And so what happened was we wound up with almost 500 orphaned databases taking up space and slowing down our MySQL on the server. All right, that's almost 500 separate databases just sitting there for no reason. So you might think it's easy to identify the orphan databases, right? But how? You can go look up the list of the whole set of databases, but which ones are actually in use? You would have to log into each subdomain that still exists, and write down or copy down to Excel, say, the database user and the database name. Okay? So you can know the name of the user. So you can make sure the user's not connected to a different database as well. So that would be a pain, right? Doing that in the cPanel, going through one folder at a time, opening each connection.php file or related file, and finding the database and making sure to copy it right to Excel, and then comparing each one to the main list of databases over and over again, right? Just to figure out which ones look like they should be deleted. That would be a pain, right? So I have to go through each and find, really, it would take about 2 minutes to manually check and log each one down, and then we'd have to visually compare against the whole list. It would take like 15 hours straight through just to do that one thing, and it would probably take longer, especially because you get hypnotized by it. So that would be a pain. That might take like 3 or 4 whole days for somebody just to get dealt with on thing.html. And then we can start to go through the rest of the websites on the server or a different server. How painful, right? So we created this database reconciliation tool. It quickly identifies which databases are actually in use. In other words, which subdomain says, yes, we're connecting to that database, and which therefore don't seem to be connected to anything, so that we can investigate further just to make sure that we didn't put it somewhere else, like in some folder somewhere. And then finally delete all the ones that prove to be orphaned. They just don't belong to anything. Okay, that's what that is, a database reconciliation tool. Here's how it works. Let's say this was your website right here. Okay, I'm just going to pick one. As soon as I click on it, it starts searching. Boom, it pulled up a whole list of databases and their associated users. I can see that in each and every case, these the users are totally unique. Okay, no, they're not. This user here connects to that database, but it also, the same user connects to that database. So if I went to to delete a database and a user, I'd want to make sure that neither of those databases are in use, right? Or only delete, or because if I delete either one, it'll delete the user. Usually the user is going to be unique, but it's good that we log it so we don't accidentally delete something that we want to keep. Everything else on here has no purpose. Why? There are no subdomains on this website. No subdomains that have panels or softwares of their own. No subdomains on that website that actually have a connection to a database. And I happen to know that on that website, there is only one panel. There is only one purpose. So there's only need for one of these. All the rest of them are just outdated. Look, this one doesn't even have a user connected to it, so it cannot even run. I'll check it out later to make sure I don't see what it's, any purpose for it. But unless it's a remote user and there's some reason that it's calling some data in from elsewhere, okay, then it should be deleted, right? So I could like select all minus whichever one proves to be the guy's real one that he needs, and then just delete. And I will suddenly clear out all those orphan databases and free up room and speed up SQL and make that guy's website a whole lot nicer than it was. How's that for cool? Now, if there were subdomains in there, they'd be marked, right? It would say this one, it would show you a subdomain, okay? Status is basically active, right? But it would show you the URL. It'd be like public_HTML/ whatever the folder is. Whatever the folder is, whatever the folder is, whatever the folder is, whatever the folder is, okay? So you would know, all right? That's the idea. That's the whole point there. It would recognize the subdomain folder, and that way you could see, as long as these subdomains are things you care about, then you'll keep those databases. Whatever you don't care about, you can delete the databases here and then go manually delete the subdomains, or even just do it with this, right? That's why we have other tools anyway, like manage subdomains, right? And even delete subdomain files. You could delete files out of subdomains, but leave the subdomains intact, or you could delete them both. you can manage the databases or the subdomains. Matter of fact, just to kind of get the point. Last thing I guess I'll point out, and it just takes a moment or two to run, but if it's a really big, intense website, kind of like thing to HTML is, then yeah, it'll take some minutes to run, maybe 5 or 8, to gather all the data and show us which ones are which. Okay. Yeah, there just are no subdomains on here, right? If there were, it would show us some, and it would allow us to, yes or no, delete the domain files, and otherwise definitely delete the selected subdomain. So we'd select whatever we want to delete, and we can delete them while leaving the folders with the files intact, like public_HTML/biking. We can leave that folder with all of its files in there, but just delete the actual subdomain link. Or if we check that box, we're saying delete both. Get rid of the subdomain and the folder with the files in it, because we don't need it anymore. It's wasting space. Okay? So everything about cleanup speeds your website up. For those of you that don't know, because maybe just didn't know or pay attention, there's this, not the zip extractor, but zip files to delete. You know how often when you move stuff over and you upload stuff, you wind up with a bunch of zip files, usually in the root, maybe one level deeper. And again, I mean, I don't even know what this guy has, but if I'm searching 2 folder levels deep, or 1 or 2 or 3 or 4, I can see if there are any zip files, right? There aren't. But if there were, I'd be able to check mark them and delete them if I don't need them anymore, right? I could remove the zip files that are sitting there old. Most zip files are old anyway. After you upload your zip files and extract them, the zip file is still sitting there unless you delete it. But once you start changing your files, that zip file is outmoded, right? It's the old zip file that you originally uploaded, which is cool if you want that backup. But the more you adjust your files, the older it gets. So sooner or later, you're going to want to manually create a new backup around that old file. You want to get rid of the old one and back up the new one, right? So that you have a new fresh zip file that's updated, right? That way you can download that, have your backup, okay? And another way to do a backup on your site anyway is the whole create portable panel, right? And it just downloads the whole website to your file repository, wherever it is that you created in your file repository, a folder to receive it. And then that way you have different folders so that you know what's in each folder. You just download to each folder. And the whole point of that, of course, is to save your work, you know, copies of your work, right? That's totally awesome. All right. I just want to make sure you guys knew what that was. So when you see this reconciled databases, you understand what it's for and how to use it and the value of it. Okay. Hope you found that interesting.